What's up, guys? As you can tell by the title, is what I wanted to discuss is some recent news that came out. It's sort of an unsubstantiated rumor, but it is going to spark some dialogue and discussion, which you know I'm good for. You know I really love to do with you guys. So that'll be the discussion today. What I wanted to do is real quick. The gameplay in the back you're going to see is a flawless tank gameplay style of map. It's the style I really like to play, of patrolling the middle ground, and if my teammates have my back, I have a repairer and a gunner. I like to stay in the middle ground, and this applies for all maps, not just Siege here. I like to play the middle ground, control this middle area, and if I lose some flags toward my backside, I go back, cover them, play the middle, don't push up too far into enemy lanes, and if you control this middle ground for the most part, it leads the way to a nice blueprint to consistent victories, and that's how I like to play it. You'll see it in the back. Anyway, back on topic. Recently, and this might be old news for many of you, because I'm sure, like I've been really busy between not playing a lot of video games, and the only games I have played are Fallout lately, but I'm a certified storm spotter now. I will chase storms. I'll be back down in Texas, Oklahoma for May for tornado season. I chase storms here. I'm into photography. I'm looking into whether or not I want to go into law school or meteorology. So I'm all over the place. I'm behind in the news, especially video game news. Bear with me if, of course, you've heard all this news, you've discussed it to death, and you don't want to discuss it anymore. Just tag along for the ride, ball out. If you do want to tag along, great. Please give me your opinion and discuss it. But what I wanted to, of course, going into it is, with that unsubstantiated rumor that came out, there was a recent leak on a Swiss website stating that the next Battlefield would be released as a World War I shooter. Of course, if you're like me, to the point where you annoy your friends and your family because you question nearly everything, the point of even the minute details, you don't buy into any rumor unless there's some proof behind these rumors, and there's absolutely none here, so I don't buy the rumor yet. But of course it did get me thinking, what would be the pros and cons of a World War I shooter, and what would I want to see, not only in that game, but in other games, which I'll discuss really quickly here in this scenario. So for World War I, the pro for me is the fact that it would be straying away from the futuristic or modern theme of FPS games that we've been seeing running rampant as of late. And I'm not a huge fan of most futuristic themes, to be blunt. Testing out the Frostbite engine in past environments would provide captivating and potentially beautiful gameplay, so I think that would be a big pro. And just to stray away from futuristic themes, futuristic weapon types and gadgets, I think would be a nice breath of fresh air for the most part. But the cons, of course, is World War I would have extremely limited weaponry variants. So for the most part, you're going to be using rifles. You're going to be using bolt action type variants. So if you hate sniping, you're going to hate this. If you don't like bolt actions, you'll hate it. If you don't like PDWs and such, you're going to hate it even more. That, of course, means for me as a Canadian, it would be the return of the Ross rifle. So if you're going to balance sort of an authenticity versus fun gameplay, or you're just going to completely throw authenticity out the window and call it a World War I game, because I don't know how you would really balance it out. I'll get to that in a minute. But the Ross rifle would mean that if you're in trench warfare, which is a large part of World War I, it's exposed to dust and mud would make the thing jam like hell. So are you going to have it authentic as in the game, this weapon's going to jam, or are you going to have it as, oh, it's the Ross rifle, it never jams, even though it's proven in history that it did, but jams wouldn't make for fun gameplay. So you see, it's that authenticity versus fun factor point. And are you actually going to follow history chronologically authentically? Another debate. That's a potential issue. And of course, there's other issues. Chemical weapons were a very prominent part of World War I, and I imagine, are you going to make them available to the individual player? Is everyone going to have one? Are they going to be, with its area of effect, will it burn off? Will it stick around? Will it be 100 times worse than the UCAV in terms of low risk, high reward options? I don't know. Again, to sell, DICE might have to break authenticity historically and throw in weapons and gadgets that either don't exist or don't make sense in that time frame or war type scenario. Maybe they're going to throw in like the Mark V tanks as just a DLC to sell premium. Or is it going to be pay to win? Are these weapons going to be the top end ones in the DLC? Like, are these? I think these are all valid questions. We might not have answers to them, but I think they're absolutely worth discussion on here. If you're going to play a World War I game, of course you're going to base it on trench warfare, which to me is not only going to be not very pretty, But it's not going to be a very entertaining game beyond a few matches either, because the trenches are obviously going to be the same each time, so it'll be very scripted. To be authentic, No Man's Land would have to mean certain death nearly every conceivable time you're thinking about running out. Mustard gas would mean you'd have to wear gas masks, and again, if it's going to be authentic, they should probably cover a large part of your vision. The gas itself might have to blur your screen, or you just immediately choke out. If you don't have a mask, are you going to do like what the actual soldiers did and like take a piss into a piece of cloth and cover your airways? How are we going to play that out? So logically, trench warfare would mean to a slower, more campy, as I hate that term, but some people will use it, style of play. Like digging in like an Alabama tick, as they'd say in Predator. So, again, another issue of concern. There are some cool aspects, but I don't think you could implement it as U-boats or submarine warfare, because it wouldn't really seem feasible in terms of multiplayer or level design, because then you'd have to be in a big open seas area, and the maps would have to be huge for it to make sense. But then you'd say, what about the infantry people? So like throwing in an island as a terrible add-on in a 32 versus 32 wouldn't make a ton of sense. Add into that, maybe you do submarine versus submarine, like 10 versus 10, but then that's a small game type, and good luck getting all those people to work together. Tanks, of course, back then malfunctioned or got stuck, and if you're going to make authentic, terrible terrain, then this is going to be another big issue. Same goes with aviation. Planes are going to have planes primarily used for bombing runs. Dogfights would have to be slower paced, might be better actually, might be a lot of fun there. And forward shooting machine gun planes means that shooting anything but infantry on the ground sort of is not an option. If DICE chooses to stay away from authenticity, I wouldn't really see a point to calling it a World War I shooter. But that would be the only way to really almost prevent an almost exclusive trench warfare tactics. In all honesty, though, a World War I single-player game does sound pretty fun to me. I think it's got real potential, but I don't think you'd buy it for just single-player. If the rumor is substantiated, perhaps if I see some gameplay, it would change my mind. Having said that, I'm not a huge fan of the World War I theme, but having said that, I would prefer a Cold War theme. I wouldn't mind a potential World War II theme that comes with it either. If you've seen previous videos of mine, you know I'm a big fan of the Cold War and I've been pushing for it. But like I said, I just don't want a futuristic theme between Destiny, Fallout, Battlefield 4, Titanfall, and other games that are futuristic paced. I'm sort of burnt out of it, considering I didn't even like the Final Stand DLC much to begin with. But World War II would be nice. DICE would be looking for that. Like, what they were looking for, if the rumor is substantiated in World War I, would actually be better served in World War II, in my opinion. True dogfights, larger variety of weapon types, different battle types, and all sorts of different countries that you can put multiplayer maps on are very big pluses. Rush mode can be developed as the forefront as opposed to conquest, and as much as I'm sure that's not going to happen, it's an entirely conceivable scenario given the premise of the individual battles you can form around that game type. Air raids, sniper battles, improved tanked warfare, the reenactment of major battles. There's much more potential in a World War II theme. But for my case, and why I'd prefer Cold War, where I'd prefer the Cold War, I mean, the arms race was on. They began tons of different weapons, vehicles, and other prototypes, and that's key. You can place these prototypes in game, and you can. And it would also, if you're going for the authenticity behind it too, you'd be doing away with all sorts of low effort gadgets, weapons, and lock-on spam. Big plus in my opinion. Maybe not for you. That's what the discussion in the comment section's for. You can incorporate the Vietnam War in, of course, or you can just skip it entirely, although it wouldn't make any sense to just skip it entirely. You can make that count for several multiplayer maps and battles. There's a huge time frame to choose from, and as another plus. You can make it sort of more unrealistic. You can cover events from the mid-1940s all the way to the early 90s, or you can, say, pick a 20-year time frame from, say, the 70s to the 90s and pick the battles that came from that. So you can choose, say, if you're going back to the 60s, you can make an event around, say, the Cuban Missile Crisis. You can jump back to the 80s and the early 90s, include the Falkland Islands, the Gulf War, the Kuwait War, or I'm not sure. Is Kuwait War after closer to the mid, or is it early as well? I don't know. We'll go to the Gulf War. Maybe around the Kuwait oil fires, stuff like that. Correct my history if I was a little bit off on that in the comment section. Yeah, no. But Personally, I'd prefer that. I'd much prefer the Cold War there in that era. If you want a single player, you can like. Personally, if a multiplayer game is done really well, I'd prefer you just take it completely out of the game. I don't need a single player. If you do prefer it though, Google the name Stanislav Petrov. The man is single-handedly responsible for preventing a potential modern-day Fallout-type scenario from nuclear warfare that was an entire conceivability today, if not for that man. So Google his name. You could play a single-player map or a level based on probably that man's contributions to history. So there's a lot to work with here. You could tear down the Berlin Wall. I don't know. It's another conceivability. So to sum up, I believe there's lots to play out and tons to utilize for fun potential here. Maps all over the place, maps in different countries, different levels, different battle types. Rush can be a huge prominent it could be a feature and mode brought back that would bring life back into me. It'd make me such a passionate YouTuber again, as opposed to now where I'm just sort of around. I still enjoy making videos, but Battlefield was the bread and butter of why I got to 20,000 subscribers, and I just haven't enjoyed Battlefield 4 much. It was all I would like is a game that brings back breaks free of bloated gadgets, good map balance, and one where rush mode is worth playing again. Is that too much to ask? So that's it. That's all I have. Load up the comments with suggestions, your thoughts, whether you agree, disagree, anything. Even if you're like, I want a Battlefield game that's World War II, throw it in. What have you got? Suggestions. Let's dialogue. Have a fucking good one, everyone.